All right, thanks. Well, we'll get rolling here. I've got my colleague Seth Godden who's going to help me with this.
Right.
We got Sean Morrissey, who is a St. Mike's student, who's interning with us, who's going to help us as well.
Nice to meet you, Sean and Paul.
In your agenda, the questions are here. But I guess the first question is, to what extent right now are you using the career and technical education? Do you have any interface with those centers today? Are you working with them? Do you have any interaction with them? Just throw that out.
Worked at Burlington a couple years ago.
For what purpose?
They were trying to get support to get someone to actually listen to them. Mainly on like the state side. The two tech teachers there kind of pounding like we need more classes, more tech, software development classes. And they were getting zero support. So they started asking us if we could help make some noise, which we did for a while. And then they were kind of told to be quiet, I guess. They were making noise. So they kind of got beaten down. And those were the two teachers that were actually trying to do stuff. And they were like, we have so many students we can't take right now. And there's no curriculum. So they wanted us to help push that forward.
Funding and curriculum changes?
Yeah, we were asking them, like, why aren't there more people in these classes? Why aren't they pushing them more? And they said they were trying. They needed support and help to make that happen. And it wasn't coming. And the powers that be were kind of like telling them to just teach their classes. That's where it was left. That was a couple years ago.
Anyone else have interaction with them?
Mike has the benefit of focusing on a very specific area of talent and technology. We hire across, we have about 500 people. And I must admit, yes, we hire across all from hourlies or livable wage. Less and less hourlies because technology is taking out over rapidly, but we just hire 50 people instead of on hourlies. But our team has no capacity whatsoever to engage at this level. You know, we are running like everybody else. I'm sure everybody else running business are planning ahead really beautifully. But, you know, we're running, when we look up, we need 50 people, they get 3 months, go get them. And the team don't really think ahead at that level. So that, and it's not like, you know, showing up and sitting on a committee. You'd have to push hard to get my HR team. We got one woman running 2 sites, recruiting that whole thing, and another person running head office, 100 people. So our real focus is college, post-college, is importing highly skilled, highly motivated people to create, you know, a lot of value. So this area is definitely a gap for us in terms of engagement. And I think that the question for us would really be, you know, the payback, as in time horizon. You know, we don't know where we'll be in 2 years from now. We're really focused on getting through that.
So would you think production workers, skills for production workers?
Yeah, I mean, this is one area. If I'm looking at our U.S. versus, you know, we got a plant in Holland. The same line in the U.S. is 11 people on it. In Holland, I got 3 people on it. Those 3 people are engineers. There is no morality. They're just punching computers. I mean, everything is done mechanically. The cookie dough comes in, and the box is opened by a robot. It's dumped in. It's kept frozen. It goes through. There's an X-ray machine that checks it. There's another machine that checks that. Here, we're still doing it manually because labor costs are lower. But I mean, it's just a question of time. So we are looking for that skilled midterm, but that jumps quite high, quite quick. So it's not like, you know, you're sort of going from hourlies. And hourlies, we're really hiring on attitude. Can you show up every day? Are you sober? Are you, you know, ready to go? Then we teach you everything you need to know if you got the right attitude. And then it jumps quite high. You know, a supervisor or a technical person is really it's quite a jump.
So what does that look like in the schools then? What do we do with our schools that make that work for you?
Well, I guess, you know, I think the challenge for me is the sort of the supply model versus the demand model. And, you know, so where are these kids going? What is their vision? for themselves. And I think the hard part, if we cannot create a clarity about what their opportunities are, they're not going to work hard to get there. And that is a little bit the feeling I'm getting when I'm looking at the kids now, is that the world is changing really fast. They're sort of giving up when trying to work out where they go with it. And giving them that clarity of what could different career paths look like and what do you got to do to get there, I think then they'll figure it out. So to me that, and I don't know how we could engage in that, it's definitely not sitting in committees and giving input, but emotionally connecting young people with where they can go is something that at least my organization is very good at. That's what we do in our day job. We get people to buy stuff. So that to me seems to be the big gap. Like, what is the vision we're giving them? Then they'll work towards it.
How about anyone else with experience with them? Jen?
If I could just add to that, and then I'll tell you about our experience. What I keep going back to, and we had this discussion before, is pre-K education. I don't even think we can seriously talk about an action plan if we don't talk about pre-K, because these kids are showing up to school not ready to learn. And teachers are playing catch-up, they're chasing their tail. Young workers, should-be workers, can't afford to work, so they're home with their kids. So if we can start talking about pre-K, universal pre-K education, or pre-K for our lowest wage earners, then I think we can really kill two birds, right? We can have kids better prepared to come to school and learn. They know how to tie their shoes, they know how to have a conversation, they haven't been plugged in for 5 years. But then we can also enable our lowest wage workers to actually go to work, specifically women. With all that said, we have 25 employees. We don't have any experience working with CTE, but 50% of our employees are native Vermonters with no secondary education. We recruited all of them because we saw that they were hard workers. We've sent several of them to school, paid for different classes at community college. One of them we helped get certified to drive a truck, and we've had great success with them. And I just want to add that I am really here and interested in this because we're building our foundation. We've been focusing on scholarships for the last 4 years, college scholarships, but we really want to change our direction and start working with the state schools and see what we can do to help kids get into, especially women, into non-traditional roles and get kids into trades. And I really think that starts at least in 8th grade, if not sooner. But really, I just want to echo the need for kids to be able to do basic math, measure, be able to dress for work, make eye contact, just these kind of basic competencies, and then we can train them.
I'll agree with that. We're in construction, but we have about 18 other spin-offs that have happened in the last 40 years. And a lot of times we're just watching each of the employees to see what their aptitudes are, what they like to do. So we have an electrical company, we do solar work, we do net zero stuff, which is really high-tech stuff. Requires some certifications for that. And then we just do general construction. We might do 30-unit building in Ludlow right now, or a bunch of houses on top of Burlington. Our success stories are building in pride in what they do, and also kind of connecting it to the interests they have. So some of them might be interested in cabinetry. Others might really want to frame a house so they can take their girlfriend by and show them that they built that house. But what really has helped our company is when the clients also get on board and they understand what we're doing, and they also contribute to that pride. One particular story is we built a house for one of the owners of the Red Sox, and he loved everybody on the crew. There's 25 of us building his house. It took over a year. You can imagine how big it was. But they were so proud of that, and they were all Red Sox fans. And he put them all in row 1, seat 1 at Fenway Park when the house was finished. So that was 7 years ago, and every one of them is still with me. Every one of them is 7 years smarter. There are things in construction that take 25 years to learn. There's nothing about construction that's simple, other than banging your fingernail. Anybody can do that, but there's nothing about construction anymore. It's a high-tech industry. It's all about air, moisture, anything that's high performance, windows, doors. They have to learn all that stuff, and they will only learn it by doing it. And so, I was making notes, but I don't want to tie up the whole show, but certainly love to send it, somewhere where somebody can get all these comments. But the bottom line is, I've said this before, I think I say it every time I come here, and it's too bad that we're separated from them, because this is something educators don't realize. That number one question is how to make employers want to hire. How do you make an employer want to hire? And right out of the movie Red October, how do you make them want to get off a nuclear submarine? I love that line, because we have to want to hire somebody. We don't want to have this, oh great, now I got to hire another one of those kids. And it's just going to be a total loss to our company. It's going to demoralize our best people. We're going to put somebody with them that doesn't want to work. They have to drive him home. His parents are calling because he sweated during the day.
Paul, that's really a helpful way to, I'm going to keep this moving a little bit, but helpful way to frame that. We will get your comments about what you think the schools should look like back to the rest of the
give them on ninth
So that's
grade
what we're
elective.
looking. So that is a good framing. So as you each speak, tell us what you need, but then keep coming back to what do you think the schools. This is a policy group. What do you think the schools should look like in your mind? That's why you're here.
I would say, if I could just finish on that one, I won't say any more, but we have to make more than we spend. We have to make payroll on Thursday. If we don't make payroll on Thursday, you guys go home or they get a job somewhere else. Creditors don't get paid, you're out of business. There's no other rule in the universe for business. You have to make more than you spend. Nobody's gonna raise the taxes for us. That's just the difference between a government job versus the private sector. Nobody has sympathy for us. They just say we're poor managers. So in this whole thing, you're asking us to do something, and we sense this heavy moral responsibility to do it. Yes, we do. We don't like seeing our towns fall apart either. We want these kids. But I can't hire summer help. OSHA won't let me. I mean, that's another subject for another day. I would tie up the whole night. I could bring you 400 pages of things that kids under 18 can't do.
Well, let me suggest that if you can't, because of federal law, and we know there are constraints, what can our schools do that will replicate that, or how do we work around that to get kids the skills that we think they could be learning at 15 and 16 before they're able under federal law to do that work out?
Create an
So that's a good,
ninth grade
excellent point.
where a kid can choose an elective and call it construction, but it might be something else. It might be the medical industry. It could be anything, but if there's an interest they have at 9 years, at whatever age they are in ninth grade, been a while. So, why not do that? And then structure your laws around that. Okay, you got to protect the employer. You got to make him want to hire someone who's chosen an elective, has really demonstrated already an interest. So he comes to the employer, he's interviewed, and he sensed that interest. I don't know why I wouldn't hire a kid like that if it all works together. So I could think of incentives. I mean, I wrote down about 10, but I want to take up the whole thing. So those are just things you got to make employers feel an incentive to do it. I mean, we know what those incentives are. If you have to make payroll on Thursday, you can't take all of your superintendents, and which is what you need to do, is give them your best men to train the young kid. Not only, you got to, best men are, well, here they are. They're proud of their job. They own their own house. They built their own house. They have transportation. They don't just have transportation, they have pride in their truck. Okay? They're reliable, they're there 10 minutes early every single day, and that's to the job. They're highly skilled, they have a work ethic, a relational maturity. They get along with each other, even though they don't agree with each other, they get along. And they don't go fighting on the job site. They have total respect for all authority, including the owners, including the boss, including the other guy. And then they have a willingness to purchase their own tools. I mean, if I find that in a kid, then we'll hire them immediately. We got two last year, they're just golden. They came up, they're brothers, they're orphan brothers. They take care of each other, but they're 18 and 19. But they've cared for each other since they were 9 and 10. They hiked their way up from Virginia to Vermont. And we happen to be building a nursing home in Windsor. And they walked from town to my office, which is about 5 miles. And we said, well, we're really not hiring an experienced couple. For 3 days, they walked from Windsor to the office to ask again, are you hiring yet? I mean, how can you turn that down? I mean, so we hired them, and that was actually 2 years ago. And
I want to get to
wants to get
some of your
electricians.
other recommendations, but I want to hear from some of the other employers about
Can I
their
write this stuff
interaction.
down? Though?
Yes.
It'd be easier for me to write that down.
Yes,
and
would
send
you?
it, but I don't know where to send it.
No, I'll send you an email.
Okay.
And everybody identify yourselves as you speak.
Anyone else having interaction with their career center? Go ahead.
So I'm Lori Gunn from the Medical Center, University of Vermont Medical Center. Probably a different perspective than some of the smaller employers. I asked around if we had any interaction, and it's pretty ad hoc. So I would say we get some requests for job shadowing, but not consistently and not through a formalized mechanism. We've been asked to do mock interviews in Burlington, which we've helped with. And had some conversations about interns, but we don't have anything formalized on that. So I would also say I can't recall ever being contacted to ask our input in what kind of courses or, needs that we have, and healthcare being sort of on the higher end of the spectrum of priorities. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for interaction, and I would agree if they want us on committees or advisory boards, there needs to be, I think, a more aggressive ask than passively creating them and expecting us to even know that they exist and finding them. And I agree that our time is pretty limited, so I think people are willing to do that work, but I think it needs to be more coordinated and it needs to be more coming to us than us coming out from that perspective.
Greg?
Yeah, Frank. I'm Greg McGuire from Revision. We don't really work with the tech centers too much, and I would say that our folks are really hard pressed to do their jobs. So this does require a bit more time, and it is a little bit of a challenge because we're trying to respond to the market. And when we respond to the market, we need to ramp up pretty rapidly. To give you an example, up at Newport, we added 140 jobs since the summer to respond to opportunities that we had to make helmets up there. There's not a lot of time to do planning and to get input and to educate, so we have to be pretty reactive. The thing I want to touch on, though, is really a lot of points that are on what is the strength of our workforce in Vermont, and it is the work ethic. Because I'll say that what we have in Newport is a dedicated workforce that they're proud of what they do. They for all the things that you're touching upon, those are all attributes of a very good worker. However, in hiring, not only having the people we already have on our payroll in Newport, but adding 140 more, we are pretty much tapping out the market up there. So now we're getting into some high maintenance employees, and that's where you're really coming up against work ethic is a challenge. Really being accountable. I mean, I don't know how you teach this, but it's important to impart that because they have to care about what they're doing. They have to show up. They have to have accountability.
And they quit if you tell them they can't smoke.
Yeah, or
It's that simple. I'm out of here.
or smoke other things.
But it may be legal. Who knows?
Yeah. No, we can't.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we're a federal contractor, and
Yeah.
despite what the state
Never
does,
legal.
it's still not
Different
allowed.
levels of
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frank, Scott Gibbs from Global Congress. So, we don't have formal interactions with the CTEs either. I mean, I think the Essex facility, we have we have a gentleman there who's been kind of engaged, but nothing really formal. We have here recently started working with CCB. So CCB approached us with this manufacturing certification, sort of a nationally recognized sort of certificate in manufacturing. So we've been kind of piloting that. The key there is trying to understand what does that certificate provide an individual and how applicable is it to our business. think historically we've done a lot of training, at least for production workers, hourly workers, internally. So as we look at this manufacturing certificate, we're trying to figure out which pieces, complement what we have done internally. Can we leverage that? So, similar to the other comments here on skills we look for in a person, teamwork, problem solving is really key. So there's a lot of structured problem solving approaches out there. We teach one internal to Global Foundries, but there's, I think, some opportunities in this manufacturing certificate to provide more employable candidates, people that I think have enough incentive to go out and say, get a certificate, or I think representative of the kind of people that we would like to come to work for Global Foundries. We employ a wide range of people, hourly, 2-year, 4-year degrees. I think at the higher levels, so the 2-year associate degree, we've been working with BTC on some curriculum. The primary focus there has been in our maintenance population. But again, I think at the CTE level, I think the comments that were made before, getting the guidance counselors to recognize that the CTE is a reasonable option to say going to a 4-year college. That's really important, I think, because in my own experience as a dad, I didn't see that in the guidance system.
Sure.
Jerry Ghazi, Vermont High Tech. We've actually represented employers working with the CTEs in 2 facets. One is their actual resources that they have available to use. So their facilities and spaces. We had huge success down at the Howard Dean Education Center. We actually ran for 8 employers, and these employers are guaranteeing jobs. So we're actually out there with the end result of after the education program, they're getting a job. And we had huge luck using their facilities, their machines, both the manual machines and their CNC machines to run the program. Similarly, we did for IDX, we actually did 20 medical transcriptionists, and we ran it in the Stafford Technical Center. Again, huge success. They allowed us to have the space, use the space, and it was a win-win for both the employer because they were able to actually have the education occur there. And then from a recruiting standpoint, this last 2 years we ran 2 summer institutes, one for hypertherm and then one for Husky, injection molding. And we actually went into the high schools and in the tech centers and recruited the students to actually in their junior year and senior years to come and take courses at actually Husky and hypertherm, where they're actually getting education for half the day and they're actually on the floor doing an apprenticeship for the other half. And that was an 8-week experience. And so we've actually had huge success going in and using them as a recruitment mechanism and actually having their students come and participate in these other programs.
And did a lot of people end up getting jobs after that?
Yeah, actually, at Husky, it's like 2-year program, so we actually got them enticed. And then they came back during their summer or their winter breaks back to Husky to actually work additional hours. That's the same with hypertherm. And then the following summer, after they graduated high school, they completed the second half. And then some of those actually went on. And
You didn't hit any of the age restriction issues?
Yeah, the age. Yeah, so 17. I mean, the beautiful thing about a registered apprenticeship in the manufacturing arena is you're allowed to actually allow individuals to work on machines with a mentor at the age of 16 to 17, I think. Cool. But it has to be a registered apprenticeship under the U.S. Department of Labor.
That's where we've run into problems too. We have a manufacturing environment, that has a lot of hazards to it. We spend a lot of time focused on safety, so we've restricted it to anybody under 18. So from a job shadowing, that presents an extra challenge.
Now, healthcare is a little bit different. I think they have to be 18, and that's where we're running with Dartmouth Hitchcock wants to do the same thing as run these. For the high school kids, run programs, but there's a difficulty with all the licensing around healthcare. So we're trying to work through that and trying to figure out ways in which we can work with the CTE centers to offer some of the stuff that normally would happen on site.
I'm going to just interject that Terry's absolutely correct that a registered apprenticeship is a way to get around the federal law on age restrictions, but so is a full-blown program that's being offered through the tech centers, through the schools, that they also qualify equally, so that is role, and that's part of where this could also move. If you employers are saying you want more students who are under the age of 18 to get this real hands-on experience, that can be done in conjunction with
I think the other important thing with, as I listen to some of the comments, and Global Foundries is in a notoriously cyclical industry. And so, some years we're hiring like crazy, other years not hiring at all. So I think, these programs in the CTE have to sort of be geared towards generic, skill sets that can be applied across a variety of employers. We'd love to have something very specific to GF, to Global Foundries, but at the same time, we don't want you to invest in a curriculum that's so specific to us that if we're not hiring, then the candidates or the kids aren't finding employment because they don't have the right skills, a broad enough skill set across the employers in Vermont.
I mean, I would say I would be considered healthcare. Probably one of my biggest needs right now is IT resources. So, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So,
Absolutely.
Programmers, we have electronic health records. We can't keep enough people
we don't have
doing that. I mean, everything is now computer-based, and so.
I remember that even the phlebotomy programs we ran, they had to be very heavily involved with the data systems.
Right.
The MAs, medical assistants, they were relying on scribing, and they have to be able to.
So as parents over here, and then employers, can you see curricula being developed starting at age 14 that could be meaningful?
Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah. And in fact, maybe my son's in the Montpelier school system. He has an aptitude toward IT, and I certainly am encouraging it. And they seem to be feeding it. I think they're doing it right in that school system. They're engaging. They're showing that there's opportunity, learning experiences.
It's even just in bringing things together. So you can be interested in the medical field, but having a very strong IT background. So you might want to be a pharmacist, but a pharmacist that has IT background is like gold, that kind of thing. So it's even melding that into really everything people do. I mean, it just has to be a foundation of what kids come with.
I think there's the premonition too, like people think that you still need a 4-year degree to go into IT. Like that is not true at all. Like some sort of experience, and experience is hard to get. But like through these programs, you can definitely get some of that stuff. And there's definitely simple stuff, entry level IT stuff. That lots and lots of jobs are available for that, like right out of high school.
I believe both Dealer.com and UVM's Medical Center participated in our internship programs. We brought high school kids in to do IT work, and they were performing equal to some of the college level students that we brought in. So it's fascinating that the opportunities are there and employers are willing, but as long as it's a controlled environment where you have the supervision and the discipline that because you're looking for those soft skills as well, that they do show up, that they show up dressed appropriately, and that they're performing appropriately within both employers' environments.
I'm curious about something.
What would a structure look like for career and technical education that would teach some skill sets that might be valuable? First of all, career readiness and things like that.
I think that to just say that there's a technical track and a regular high school track, I think is dangerous.
Right.
Because you just don't know. And I think that if you can meld it and respond to both the marketplace as well as the kids' aptitudes, who's to say that you can't get technical education infused in a high school education? Because in the end, it's the ability to communicate well and still have IT skills. I mean, to the point that IT is great if you can understand a certain field and apply the IT to that field, even better. So
maybe our next meeting will do what Paul said. two groups and have this conversation with both.
I like that idea.
Because it certainly seemed like the blocker was 17 centers, different governance. The funding is certainly not beneficial to the sending schools because they get penalized. And maybe they should just be part of the high school. I'm not going to go into governance. maybe they should be something different so that everyone has the ability, the students have the ability to float.
Are these not part of the Department of Education? Like, where does it?
No, they're kind of independent. Michelle, can you explain that? What they're?
Well,
12 of them are part of the school districts.
schools are
3 are
independent.
independent. 3 are independent, and 2 are, what are the other 2?
They sort of operate as departments within the school system. So.
And all tech centers in the end speak to 2 masters. They do still speak to the Agency of Education, and they speak to their local school boards. So they're issues of leadership.
So are they like literally renting space in the schools from the schools?
I think Howard Dean has it.
Does the school own? Do the school districts own the physical
This I can't
space?
answer.
Yeah,
I just know at the
don't
Howard
the
Dean
answer.
Education Center, Springfield High School was in one building.
That's an independent one.
Right. Oh, then okay. Then the other one's an independent one.
But it's all publicly funded.
It's all public.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
But
true.
all
So-
independently governed.
Bucket.
We've got legislators who are listening to this, so they're not missing a trick on this.
I think we're missing the point of education.
Yeah, right. And the employers I'm looking at here are going,
What's the matter?
we got a building,
Right.
move people.
But it's all the point is like it's all one. It's all education. Like
Right.
to say like it's a high school student picks one or the other.
Yeah.
Seems like so 1990 at this point.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know
going
if-
forward,
yeah.
it's going to be like this. These are all the skills you need to learn.
I don't know if you
Jump
read
back
between
and
the
forth.
lines in that report, but what I read was Agency of Education looks like they're going to be making curriculum that might be done in the career and technical centers now for career readiness and other subject areas like that. So that's a step into moving into use the whole enterprise together in a coordinated way.
I'm really not supposed to talk because I'm an observer, but I do want to make it known this is very helpful for me. I'm in education now at the Tech Center in St. Albans, but prior to that, I was with Bombardier for 15 years in manufacturing and the inventory finance side. So I can certainly see where you're coming from, and now I can see both sides, whether it's clear or not. But anyway, so thank you very much for this because it's good to hear that.
Quick question. It seems that, again, I own a janitorial business, so for me, I'm dealing with different populations, but I do think the intangibles are important, which incidentally, by the way, we do have some pretty good salaries. I just hired someone that's been out for a few years at a supervisory role at $50,000, so it's not that bad for janitorial, and I'm trying to find someone for carpet and floor care cleaning, which we provide all that training for $35,000 to $40,000, so not bad, right, for janitorial. Again, it's not 100 jobs, but it's 2. But my question and a comment too, the question is, how are the curriculums developed that are being used in these career technical centers today, and what's the decision-making process on that? And then my observation, just from hearing Jerry and some other people talk, it seems like the best scenarios are when the employers connect with these career centers. They hear the needs, there are jobs there, let's connect them for internships and so forth, and job shadows and things like that. Has that seemed to be the case that depending on how active the career centers are and the employers are in those regions, they make the connection and boom, jobs come out of that and they start to think about their curriculums and kind of focusing on that? I know they're looking at standardization across the state, but I think also in different regions, you're going to see where there's employment growth, there's direct opportunities for those people to get jobs there.
I don't know the answer to that. Is it different in every region? Different in every center, right?
Yes, and there are a lot of competencies, there are a lot of standards that you can choose from. So there's so many standards that to fit them all in within a 1 or a 2 year program is impossible. So you sort of gravitate, you may be a better teacher in this one area and gravitate more toward a group of standards within a whole cluster, and then you may gravitate toward another. So your training may look completely different.
Right, 'cause I'm thinking like dealer.com, you're going to have specific needs that you have versus maybe what you need versus what you need, but there is a core foundation that people would probably need to have. And if that's something that, you're talking about your low-hanging fruit, that's something that can be developed, and having those conversations developed. I don't know the answer.
Well, in the healthcare field, there's a certain set of core courses that are at a college level accredited, but even at a high school can be. And it's medical terminology, and those could be developed very, very rapidly. Are the resources available within the CTEs to deliver those courses? That becomes the kind of the stress point. And I think, as you were saying, that you have individuals who favor certain types of competencies. So instructors who may favor or have strength in a certain area may not be able to deliver in a different area. So they start molding kind of each program around their strengths versus the potential of molding it around what the employer is looking for that end result.
Yeah.
So they can employ that individual.
Right, so trying to figure out what the best way to do that is, where everyone gains from that.
Exactly.
If you sign me up for CTE, I would gather, but I'm thinking about four of my superintendents. I would just gather them in a room and say, hey, listen to this. What do you think about this? Do you like it? Do you want nothing to do with it? Do you have this sense that you want to mentor and just, if I give you time and you don't have to worry about me complaining that you're not getting anything done, and we have some sort of arrangement ahead of time that it's okay with me if you stop, take time and teach him what he's doing and why he's doing it. It used to be just get it done. Now it's why are you doing it? Because it's all science now. It's not construction anymore. So everything we do now interacts with something else. There's no such thing as building a house. It's all one big system now. Everything is mechanicals, electrical, solar, you name it. It's all one big house that lives and breathes by itself. And so they have to know why they're doing these things. And it really impresses the client when they can walk up to anybody on the force and say, why are you doing that? And they can stop and tell them. And so that really makes a big difference in their ego. I use the right word properly. They do need an ego in construction, but it has to be sort of a positively controlled one. But my highest paid man never went through 8th grade. That's proof. He couldn't stand sitting still. How many times in history have we read about that? The guy's a genius. He never should have been in school. And he ended up in Virgins, and they let him out in the 9th grade, and he lasted about a week. And back then, that was 35 years ago, he got a job with an electrician, and he loved it. But he loved construction more. By the time he was 16, he was working for me. He was so young, but he was so smart, he could actually superintend a major condominium project, but none of the older guys wanted to work underneath him. Because, anyway, he couldn't be stopped, and he finally went on his own, which most of them do. But he just recently came back to work for me. He makes $75,000 a year before benefits, and I make money on him. But he would love to take kids just like he was, and he'd see right through them. And he doesn't tolerate anything, and he gives them the facts about life and what lies ahead.
Where are you located? Which region? Where?
Windsor.
Windsor. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
he
trying
would
to
be
think.
one that would say, I would do that if as long as
Right.
you don't complain about what I'm not
Right.
getting done. You know,
I'm just
so-
trying to think. I'm Joan Goldstein, Commissioner of Economic Development. I'm wondering, where do we go forward from here, and how do we coalesce a group that could actually make some change? And I'm thinking it has to be regionally. So I asked where you're from, so then we could then connect you with the local schools in that area.
And the we is it
All this good stuff.
And what they
commerce,
do is
labor,
they,
education?
Self-selected
And how do
group
we do
that's-
it best? Do we go to we have to go to the employers. The employers are
Yeah.
too busy right now. Just
Well, but
getting
instead of
product out.
sitting on committees, like
Yeah.
sort of coalesce ideas about like what would be useful for you. Sorry,
Yeah.
what would be useful for you, and then
Yes.
like coordinate with the local schools to say, can we organize a group? Can it be an apprenticeship? I don't know.
Well, you
And
can,
then-
also, you can also develop what are those standards across the different regions of the state,
Yeah.
as well as what are those specifics. So I don't think you can have one or the other. I think it's going to be an intertwining of both.
Yeah. No,
Listen to this,
fair.
I would roll it back. So we got a big operation in St. Albans, so we should, instead of thinking about this, I think about state level, but let's get the lady that runs our St. Alban operation, get her connected with the right people.
Right.
We can mentor, we can do.
Yeah.
And one more thing that we've seen is that I don't think across the state there's a workforce investment board.
I'm sorry, didn't
I don't
know.
think there's a WIB in every
Right,
county.
okay.
Just to let you know, Franklin County has a very active WIB.
Yeah.
And we work collectively. So the WIB contact, the executive director, is the eyes and the ears for the employers. You are all very busy. You can't come to meetings all the time. But she goes out, she gathers the information, we have monthly web meetings, we identify the needs, we go and we tour different facilities. We just got back from Ben and Jerry's last month. So that's how we're trying to coordinate the training needs.
So try to utilize the web structures
Somewhat, yeah.
where they exist or build upon them.
Correct.
To do the outreach
talk to
to
more than
employers.
8 companies.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can talk to
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's possible, but hundreds,
Yeah.
Yeah.
at least, to get a census.
Yeah.
I'd say though, it sounds a really complex way for 625,000 people to organize themselves, but
Yeah.
But it's what it is, right?
It is.
Just add one more thing. So I think there's 2 pieces to it. There's continual planning of what it needs to look like longer term. But what I noticed when everybody was talking, so you have large, medium, and small employers here, and the only piece of action that's happened is Jerry talking about very specific programs where he's connected these students with employers, and he's sort of like this middleman, I know, working with him, who takes all the complexity out of it, figures out what you need, understands what the business needs, and connects the pieces together. So there's something missing between, these kids being educated and finding the way into these employers, whether it be, programs that we already have or programs that need to be developed. So there's something in the shorter term that's missing as well, because these kids are coming out with some kind of skills and abilities that could be used today. So to the point of we have to ramp up 10 people in the next X, there's a need for that, and then there's a need for longer term planning. So I guess I would also like to explore what is happening with the space that Jerry's occupying that could be expanded, or they need to look at more specifically for shorter term needs.
16 other high schools, average 700 kids, given how many kids we have.
Anyone else?
The cost per pupil is significant.
Any other
How
thoughts?
it'd be easy for me to do a career day, but I wonder how some of these other companies would do that. I would just take a slideshow of all the houses we built and what they look like inside and out. And right away I'd get some sort of sense of whether they're interested in what they're seeing and if they would have that interest, but I wonder how you do it. I mean, I've done career days at VTC and other schools. And is it River Valley in Springfield? I forget. Down there.
Is there requirements in the state level to there's career weeks and all that stuff that go on in school? My kids are in middle school. Are there requirements at the state level, to start talking about career pathing, a structured system all teachers are taking kids through, starting through middle school through high school?
The personal learning plan, right? Is that
It's law now.
Huh?
Right, the wheel on.
Well, maybe law, but is it happening? Because my kid's career week is hey, a couple people come in and talk just like I did in the 80s, and I was like, it's not that different.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
This has been something that I've always kind of, when I sit at home thinking about economics, which I do frequently. You're going to structure an educational profile, like capturing what we're talking about is developing that interest, casting that vision out into the future so that someone can see themselves as a meaningful participant in society. It's got to be I always break it down very structurally because I'm a very binary person. Between 4th and 6th grade, it's an industry focus. Kids can understand where food comes from, how healthcare is provided, how something gets made on a production line. And then by the time you're in middle school, late middle school, you're starting to turn it to an occupation, understanding that an accountant can work for a farmer, as an accountant can work for a hospital, can work for a factory. And then you can start tailoring your curriculum by the time you get to high school, specialize it, understanding how you can fit in, I believe in animals, and then you can see the occupations that interact with those. So it's got to be an industry focus early, but then occupational transition to personal, and then you start capturing that. And it's got to be a little bit different.
That doesn't exist today at all, does it?
No, this is a weekend project.
He's just figuring it out.
And then when all else fails, you flip the model and you will be this.
That's
right,
That's
exactly.
exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
How do you write that down and make that a requirement so we can start pushing kids through that, and then we get a clear understanding as they go through. Does it even match what industry wants in the state? Can you steer kids in a different direction? If they're in accounting, awesome. How about healthcare accounting and push them that way?
And it's interesting because the end result of not doing that is you wind up with individuals who will take whatever job. So our programs actually say we have 10 guaranteed jobs.
Right.
And we have all people from all walks of life applying for these that never even considered it before. Because the end result is that job.
There is the personal and financial reward
Exactly.
at the end of it. So. For both.
Absolutely.
That's really good, though. You should write that down.
I know.
Yeah.
Please.
Industry, occupational, personal.
Make that a law.
I like that. Yeah,
Make that a law.
Yeah, and like what's interesting, I just like
right.
tires on it a little bit, and you start talking and the challenges of like how do you get people into young groups of kids into workplaces like safely, consistently. How do you create that access for everybody? How do you create an equitable solution to that? And that's why I guess the challenge is logistics. I guess busing is a big problem in the state. For anyone who's in education, they can talk about busing problems.
Bill? I just wanted to say is that for us to be able to listen to this conversation is incredibly valuable. We don't get opportunities quite like this all that often. And part of our job is always assumption checking. I think one of the basic assumptions that we have here, career technical education, it just exists. It's important for us to know that you think getting career technical education right is really important, regardless of all the inputs you have. If you don't, we should put all our energy and effort into something else. I give Michelle tremendous credit for driving a bill and now having to actually get the punishment of working. But to put a group of people together with a statewide WIB that is far more engaged and important and valuable, because look at all the value you bring to it. People are always talking about business involvement or business involvement. The one involvement that I think costs you nothing is you just telling us this is really important and get it right. That basic piece right there. If it isn't really important and we don't need to get it right, tell us that. I think you think it's important that we get this part right, and make it work. But that is not going to happen without all of you saying, do the best you can, or listen to us, etc. More than the requirement of, you have to do a career day or this or that. I'm not so interested in that. I'm interested in how do we make Vermont productive. And if this is a really good strategy and way to work towards that.
When we don't have enough people now.
Need IT workers.
Team workers.
IT.
That's a takeaway.
But it's also good to hear that employers are starting to recognize that it's not a 4-year degree in IT so much as it's a demonstratable set of skills. And the personalized learning plans are going to really have a tremendous impact on that in terms of how young people are able to convince employers, because previously it's been what they call the signaling effect of I have this degree, therefore I'm qualified, to now here's my portfolio of what I can accomplish and here's how I can convince you to take a chance on me.
Yeah, part of it's like a track record of like, all right, you've had an interest in this, you've been programming your own games since you were in 6th grade.
Yeah.
You went to high school, you started doing all this stuff. I can show you all this stuff, and that's my experience, and I haven't gone to college and taken a single course yet, and be like, you're clearly skilled. Like, we're going to take a chance on you and teach you what you need to know at this point in time. And by the way, you're going to start making $44,000 a year out of high school.
I mean, along with those PLPs should be the PPPs, which is the personalized portfolios, where individual students are just describing what Mike just said, but actually capturing those throughout all the years for one given student, and having them, and then having the guidance counselors actually work with those portfolios to figure out what is the best track for that individual to go on.
Yeah, from a business perspective too, I think we're really frustrated with who owns this, the Department of Labor, or like it's all just BS to us. We see just a ton of overhead. Not that I want to slash government stuff, but like it looks impossible to reorganize from our perspective. And like, why is this so complex? Like, if someone's been put in front of a company and in charge of it, like, it's 30 days later, stuff's moved around, people are moved, and if you're gone, you're gone. Like, that's it. It's better for the greater good of the company to move forward. And like, why doesn't government work that way? There's a million reasons I know.
Just even someone said, we have to commission a study to look at the finances, and I went to the person and said, what does that even mean?
I mean, spend money. That's what that means.
That sounds like it's going to take us
Like, this seems like a simple problem to answer your question. Like, where do we see value? We see value in the government government like getting this stuff right so we can get our kids like moving. Like they should have their personalized plans. It should start in middle school. Like someone should own the education system of the state, and it should be simple. And we shouldn't have every region functioning independently. Like just go. Like we're tiny.
I vote for simple too, and the fear that I have is that we will come up with even more things to inject into the education system as requirements that are built on top of the impossible. I've watched my kids go through the public school system, and I've seen teachers rush the curriculum because they haven't gotten all of the requirements in for the year, and they're just shoving it into the kids. And it's not useful. And I think we need to simplify and really say what are really some of the basic outcomes we're looking at for education, instead of all these requirements that we're shoving into the system. It's daunting.
Yeah, it's complex. We get it. But.
Any other thoughts? Maybe take a break. Jerry, you realize you said the word of the day 3 times.
Oh,
huge. That's why I was smiling when you were talking. I looked at Seth. Thank you. Let's take a little break and then we'll reconvene.